What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Salman Huck. On today's podcast, we are going back to the redraft well. We haven't done this in a while, so I'm really excited. We are redrafting the top 16 picks from the 2003 NFL draft, which was an insanely deep draft. This was, I don't know about you, man, but this was probably the hardest redraft we've done.
Yeah, I agree. It was really hard.
Yeah, there was a lot of talent. It was maybe 2 Hall of Famers, I think, in this draft so far. Maybe a couple more to come. We'll see. But yeah, insanely deep draft. So we're just going to go. We're going to take turns. I'm going to introduce the pick. Salman's going to tell me who he picked. I'll tell you guys who I picked. I do not know who Salman picked. We made sure not to peek at each other's picks just to keep things exciting. So we'll start off with the first overall pick. So the Cincinnati Bengals selected quarterback Carson Palmer out of USC, a Heisman winner, long career, etc., etc. Who did you have the Bengals taking with the number 1 overall?
Yeah, I think the Bengals weren't too bad on this pick, but given the players that were in this class, I think they needed a quarterback. So I actually went with Tony Romo, who I like just slightly better than Carson Palmer, just slightly better, right? They need a franchise quarterback. I think he's so Tony Romo had a small prime, but he was just so good in that prime, right? Obviously, but when he got to the playoffs, it wasn't as great for whatever reason. But
yeah, it didn't
I
usually
think
work
he's
out
like,
for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's Dallas's all-time leader in touchdown passes. He's been a second-team All-Pro. He's been a 4-time Pro Bowler, things like that. So I think Tony Romo just slight edge over Carson Palmer here for me, call it.
I struggled with that. I looked at like their career numbers. I just couldn't get there, man. I know Romo was great for that while, decent amount of time in Dallas. The fact that he's like the leading, passer and all that stuff in team history, especially considering some of the other quarterbacks they've had. I just couldn't get there. I still think Carson Palmer is the better player. So I went with Carson Palmer. Again, the hope is that he doesn't get hurt the way he did, in that playoff game against the Steelers. So that's kind of the gamble that you take. Like, okay, maybe this time he, sidesteps that cheap hit from Kimo von Oelhoffen. I remember that play very well. It was like he had a deep bomb to Chris Henry. They scored a touchdown, and then the camera went back to him, and he's rolling around with a torn ACL and his knee all tore up. So I think it took him a while to get back from that. But if you look at his numbers, you look at his career, the Raiders stint aside, which was a complete disaster, which I made sure it didn't influence my my opinion on him because I still think he's a great quarterback. He was great in Cincinnati. He was great in Arizona. And I think he's kind of underrated over his career. The fact that you would put Romo over him was surprising to me.
I liked Romo's prime more than I think Palmer had a longer prime and it was a little more consistent, but I liked Romo's like peak years more than Carson Palmer's peak years.
And I think just the fact that he played in Cincinnati, which has been such a dumpster fire. I mean, we're seeing it play out right now with everything that's happening with Joe Burrow and how they might be torpedoing his career just because they haven't been able to protect him. It's just, it's not a good place to be as a player, period, and especially as a quarterback. But all right, I mean, that's fine. It's good that we disagree. It's fun. All right, the next pick, the Detroit Lions selected wide receiver Charles Rogers out of Michigan State. Who recently passed away, so may he rest in peace. Didn't quite work out for them. He was like the 3rd receiver they picked in a row. I don't know if he started it or if he was the last one, but Matt Millen, terrible GM, great linebacker, awful GM, just kept whiffing on wide receivers, and Charles Rogers was sick in college, so I understand why he went this high, but again, it just did not quite work out for him in the NFL. Who did you have the Lions taking second?
Yeah, I mean, the guy they should have taken was Andre Johnson, right? Who goes number 3 to the Texans. Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer. He was amazing on the Texans. He's a 2-time All-Pro. He had almost 13,500 receiving yards, 64 career touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, just when you think of wide receivers in this era, Andre Johnson is one of the first guys, right? You think about because he was just that dominant, and he did it with like David Carr at quarterback. So
he had some awful quarterbacks. David Carr, Matt Schaub.
He had some awful quarterbacks. Yeah.
I don't even know. There's like a long list of bad quarterbacks.
That's what I'm saying. So if he could make it work on the Texans, he definitely would have made it work on the Lions with like Joey Harrington and whoever else.
Yeah, I thought maybe Romo here, but they just drafted Joey Harrington the year before, and it's like it's too soon to give up on a guy like that. So the hope is that maybe this is like an early Megatron Matt Stafford kind of situation where these guys get linked together and he gets a productive wide receiver. I mean, productive is an understatement when it comes to Andre Johnson. What was interesting about him is like I don't want to say he's like reminds me of Amari Cooper, but he has that similar demeanor where he's like not the diva type. He's super chill, super quiet. Like he in an era of diva wide receivers, like you think of the early 2000s, mid 2000s, it's like Terrell Owens, Ocho Cinco, and then you have Andre Johnson who's like putting up the same numbers as these guys, but without the drama. I think yeah, we both agree on this pick. It would have been interesting to see him in Detroit. Maybe he does help Joey Harrington develop and become a decent quarterback. I think he had a decent, long backup career at least, but yeah, didn't quite work out for him in Detroit either. But that seems to be the theme for the Lions in this era at least. All right, number 3, the Houston Texans. They selected wide receiver Andre Johnson out of Miami. Obviously, he's not on the board for you. So who did you have the Texans picking third?
Yeah, I'm going Troy Polamalu. So obviously is he a Hall of Famer yet? Or he's going to be a Hall of Famer soon?
He is already, yeah.
He is. Okay,
he's
a
first
Hall of Famer,
ballot,
yeah. So
yeah.
He was first ballot, yeah. So again, Hall of Famer safety, can't go wrong with that, right? Like, I mean, he's probably one of the most dominant safeties in this era along with Ed Reed. So, I mean, this guy was a machine, right? And he was already a top, I think he went, 12 or 13 here to or 16 here to the Steelers,
16
I think.
to the Steelers, yeah.
16 to the Steelers, yeah. Pick. So, I mean, this guy was amazing. He was like a 6-time All-Pro. He's Defensive Player of the Year. He's won 2 Super Bowls. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with the Hall of Famer like Troy Polamalu at number 3.
This is a slam dunk pick. I went with Polamalu as well. I even considered him like for the first or second pick just because
I did too.
Yeah, he's probably the best player in this draft. With Cincinnati, I'm like, all right, you needed a quarterback. Detroit, they probably should have taken him, but you're thinking, okay, we just drafted a quarterback. Let's get him some weapons, which I think that's probably what Matt Millen was trying to do is, save Joey Harrington's career before it completely went off the rails. And even this one, like I was like, okay, maybe Romo here, but they just drafted David Carr the year before. And he had an awful season, but he got sacked like 80 times, so it's not really his fault. But yeah, so we both agree. Troy Polamalu, probably the best player in this draft, Hall of Famer. You listed all the credentials. Can't really go wrong there. All right. 4th overall, the New York Jets. So there was some confusion when I was like looking through the redrafts. There's a lot of trades in this draft, so I just went with who actually made the pick because I think they traded up with the Bears. Yeah. Okay, you did the same thing. All right, let's just it just makes things easier to keep track that way. So the Jets selected defensive tackle Dwayne Robertson out of Kentucky. The fact that I didn't know who this was probably tells you the kind of career that this guy had. So who did you have the Jets picking here?
Yeah, Sam, I looked at this now. I was like, who's this guy? He was number 4 overall pick. What? I went with the guy who went a few picks later. And remember, Colin, this is that infamous draft where the Vikings forget to submit their card. And they end up going from like, we'll get there, but they were supposed to be pick 7, but then they slid down to pick 9.
Yeah, on this one, I wonder, like, I was reading through, I'm like, did they do it on purpose? Maybe I guess it's not the thing. It's not this era where it actually affects your pay because of like the pay scale, but
isn't it like, because they were like the lower the pick you were, the lower your guaranteed money was, right? Like, or like at least when they were like rookies were still getting paid, right? Or was that?
Yeah, it wasn't like an official thing, right? Like the way it is now, it's kind of locked in, right? There's the rookie pay scale. It's like, all right, you're the 15th overall pick versus the 8th or whatever. Back then it wasn't because remember guys were holding out all the time. Mm-hmm. If you remember, I think it was after the Sam Bradford draft where he held out for a while.
What it was. Yeah,
because he wanted a ton of money, and it's like now it's like okay, no, there's barriers or guidelines, whatever you want to call it, in place. This was not the case in 2003. So I'm like, what kind of organizational incompetence that you miss your pick twice?
Not once, twice.
Yeah. So we're stepping on that segment. So
yeah,
please continue.
Okay. Yeah. So I had the Jets going with Kevin Williams, who went number 9 in this draft. Dominant defensive tackle. This is exactly what the Jets were hoping they'd get out of Dwayne Robertson, but they did not. I mean, Kevin Williams, 5-time All-Pro, 63 career sacks, 6-time Pro Bowler. Like he was just a very dominant defensive lineman for the Vikings, and he would have probably done the same here for the Jets.
Yeah, I went with an edge rusher. So again, we disagree. I went with Terrell Suggs, who is the leading sack artist in this draft. He has like 100 plus sacks, had a long, long career, played, I think, like 17, 18 years. So I know Kevin Williams, it was hard for me to pass him up, and he ends up falling a little bit in my picks, but I just couldn't pass up Suggs and the impact that he could have made on this team, especially like you think of the Jets of this era, like the 2000s. You're thinking a strong defensive identity. You're thinking Rex Ryan. Kevin Williams fits all those things, but I think Terrell Suggs would have added some more excitement to that team. I mean, nobody gets that excited about a defensive tackle, so let's spice it up and get T Sizzle out there in New York. All right, it's getting interesting. I'm curious who you're going to have here. So the Dallas Cowboys, 5th overall, they selected cornerback Terrence Newman out of Kansas State. Is in the mix, I think, for top 16 here. Who did you have the Cowboys picking here?
Yeah, I had him going Carson Palmer, so I didn't let Palmer slide too much further down. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys thought Quincy Carter was an NFL quarterback for whatever reason, and he was starting for them. Carson Palmer comes in, he takes over the job. I mean, like you said, right? Carson Palmer had a pretty good career, 3,500 plus yards, 294 touchdowns, 3-time Pro Bowler. So I think he would have had even better career here on Dallas, right? Like, Dallas looked into Tony Romo, right, as an undrafted free agent, and then he took over for Quincy Carter. But who knows what it could have been with Carson Palmer at the helm.
I think it fits, right? It makes sense. They did have a
Yep.
Heisman quarterback, Heisman winning quarterback before. I believe it's Roger Staubach. He kind of fits, right? He's tall, 6'5", chiseled, the prototypical quarterback for that era. Handsome guy, made sense. And he just was kind of overlooked in Cincinnati, but now he gets to be center stage in Dallas. So obviously Palmer is off the board for me because he went number 1 overall. So I just went with Tony Romo. I'm like, I couldn't let this guy slide any further. So obviously he went undrafted out of Eastern Illinois, ends up becoming, franchise quarterback, obviously all the stuff that you already talked about at the top. He was super exciting. I just, there was always like something missing, and I'm wondering if it's just the Cowboys curse. Is it like Jerry Jones used up all his karma in the early 90s? Have you watched the Jerry and His Boys or whatever, the Cowboy and His
No,
whatever
I
it's
haven't
called, the
watched
new
that yet.
Netflix
Yeah,
special?
America's Team or something like that.
Yeah, it's called The Gambler and His Cowboys.
I haven't watched that one.
I think you'll like some of it because there's a lot of Niners involvement, but it's very much like it's a Jerry Jones like PR piece,
Is this the one with Charles Haley where he's like I
Yeah.
took a dookie on the desk or something like that, or like peed on the desk or some shit like that? Is that the one? Same
Yeah,
documentary?
exactly. I
Yeah.
haven't gotten to like the real juicy stuff. I'm about halfway through, and they're still talking about like the build up. They just won the first Super Bowl. It's like exciting, feel good. Charles Haley's talking shit about the Niners for trading him, all that stuff. I haven't gotten to the crazy stuff like the whorehouses and Michael Irvin
And the
stabbing his
cocaine
teammate.
and
They called it the White House because of the cocaine. And it was like I also read The Boys Will Be Boys. It was the Jeff Pearlman book about the 90s Cowboys, and they were just everything that you could imagine like a pro NFL team doing, just like the debauchery was just like turned up to 100. But yeah, maybe it's just a Cowboys thing. But yeah, Tony Romo, super exciting, all this stuff, just some playoff disappointments, unfortunately, for him. All right, next, the New Orleans Saints. They drafted defensive tackle Jonathan Sullivan out of Georgia. So again, a guy that I was like, who? Who the hell is that? So who did you have the Saints picking 6th there?
yeah, I couldn't let T Sizzle slide too far down my board here, so I had him going Terrell Suggs again. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame as well, I imagine, if he's not there yet. But again, amazing pass rusher. I think he won Defensive Player of the Year in 2011, 7-time Pro Bowler. I think he has 139 career sacks, and he has a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, that came at the expense of my Niners, but that is his Super Bowl. He's an elite pass rusher, right? And there's not too many of those that you can count on. And the Saints are just devoid of talent at this point. So any talent they can add, even the almost future Hall of Famer here, that would have been elevated them. It doesn't even matter a positional need for the Saints. They could have gone any position, honestly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I took the best player.
Speaking of Hall of Fame talent, I had another one. And this is Antonio Gates. So one of the top tight ends in NFL history, a Hall of Famer. Didn't even play college football, if I remember correctly. He was a basketball player at Kent State, of all places. His story is just crazy. They should make a movie about it, but he ends up spending his entire career with the Chargers, Hall of Fame career with a bunch of different quarterbacks there. Mostly Phillip Rivers, but some Drew Brees time there early on. And then, but I guess in this case, maybe he ends up playing with Drew Brees in New Orleans after a few years. So I wonder how his career would have gone. But I know probably would not have worked out exactly the same way playing in New Orleans with Aaron Brooks and whoever else they had at quarterback before they got Drew Brees. But the guy's an incredible talent. He would have elevated whoever they had at quarterback, and hopefully he still ends up with Drew Brees at some point, but could not pass him up here.
Yep, nope, makes sense.
All right. Next, 7th overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected quarterback Byron Leftwich out of Marshall, who had a solid career. Not spectacular. Spent a long time as a backup as well. Had some good years with the Steelers, if I remember correctly. Again, as a backup. Who did you have the Jaguars taking here?
Yeah, couldn't let Antonio Gates fall too far here. So Antonio Gates, Jaguars needed talent. They literally had nothing on offense. So yeah, add a Hall of Famer like Antonio Gates. He's, Hall of Famer. He's 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All Pro. He's got, 11,841 yards receiving, 955 receptions, 116 touchdowns. Like, he just found a way to get open, like you said. He's just
all the time.
All the time. Like, I think it didn't matter who the quarterback would have been. He would have been open and someone would have gotten the ball. So I think you can't pass up on a guy like that.
I will say, as a Raiders fan, I hated this man so much from like the depths of my soul. I was so tired of this guy. I think it's been like a 20-year problem for the Raiders where they just cannot cover tight ends. And it started with Antonio Gates. Currently, it's Travis Kelce. That's torturing them in the division. But it started with Antonio Gates. No matter who was covering him, it was just a guarantee. This guy is going to have between 80 to 120 yards, probably a touchdown in each of the games against the Raiders. So yeah, I just hated this man. That's really about it. I went with Jordan Gross. So he's probably the best offensive lineman in this draft. I really liked these Jaguars teams. I remember in those early 2000s when it was between Byron Leftwich and David Garrard. They had Maurice Jones-Drew, Fred Taylor at some point. It was like they always had great defenses. They had those 2 defensive tackles. I believe it was Henderson. I forget the other guy's name, but they were just like a great defensive team, and they would run the ball hard. And David Garrard and Byron Leftwich were out there making plays. It was one of those teams where like you never expected them to win the Super Bowl or anything like that, but they were just fun to watch, especially like maybe a few years after this, again, when Leftwich lost his job to Garrard and all that, but a fun team. And you just can't pass up a Pro Bowl left tackle that's going to be there for, 10 years for you. All right. We'll go to the 8th overall pick. So the Carolina Panthers selected Jordan Gross, tackle out of Utah. So he's off the board for me. But who did you have the Panthers picking here?
Yeah, I had them going Jordan Gross. They made the right pick, surprisingly. Yeah, I mean, I think he started pretty much every single game of his career at left tackle and 167 starts, right? So he's a Pro Bowler, and he anchored that Super Bowl run with Jake Delhomme and Steve Smith and all those guys. So yeah, he's just a generational left tackle, and you don't find too many of those in the draft. And when you pick the guy right, you keep him in the redraft, right?
Exactly. It's one of those things where it's like it's a dream scenario, but it's one that it's not going to sell tickets. It's not going to sell jerseys. It's not going to get people like too excited in the fan base. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you have even a good left tackle, it's one of those things you're just like, it takes a load off your mind. And especially if you have a great left tackle, it's like a set it and forget it type thing. You're just like, all right, we're set. The left side is locked up. It's all good. 10 years. It's like him, like Joe Thomas, Orlando Brown. I mean, you guys have one in Trent Williams. Yeah, Joe Staley for a while. You just like
I'm worried about the Niners after Trent Williams retires, which is looking like this year.
It's very valid. It's one of those things where it's like you don't think about it as a problem until it's like, right in your face, and you're having a rotating cast of guys at left tackle, and you're like, oh shit, this is why our quarterback is getting destroyed every week because his blind side is exposed. So I went with Anquan Bolden, who went out, from Florida State. He was a second round pick. He's like legendary for running a really slow 40, but having an incredible NFL career. This was the year that they made it to the playoffs, or sorry, made it to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots, but they had a good receiving core. They had Steve Smith, Musa Muhammad, and Ricky Prohl, and I just wonder, like, let's throw Anquan Bolden in there. I just couldn't pass him up as a talent. He ends up having a long career, balls out for the Niners, the Ravens, the Cardinals. He bounces around, which is, kind of unusual for a player of his caliber. But I think he's one of those guys that's just like constantly underlooked and underrated. But then he would just, produce wherever he was. So I don't know where you had him, but maybe this is a little bit early for you. But are you a fan? I know you're a fan of him.
No, of course I'm a fan of Anquan Bolden. I mean, I wasn't a fan initially, because he was on the Cardinals, but man, he had an amazing rookie year with the Cardinals.
He did.
Like nobody saw that coming. Like everyone's like, oh, who's this guy who ran a 4.8? He's not a guy. And then all of a sudden he comes out. It's like he's not really a 4.8 guy. He might be a 4.5 guy. Might be a 4.4 guy.
Yeah, he was a 4.4
for whatever reason.
Or something.
Yeah,
something didn't make sense.
He had game speed. So it was just amazing. And then he came to the Niners. Yeah. Then he came to the Niners, and he had an amazing run there too. So it was great.
Yeah. Funny story. He actually lived next door. That one year he played for the Niners, he lived next door to a friend of mine in San Jose. He was renting the house next door. Very nice guy. He's very unassuming. He didn't drive like a Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever. I think he had he had a nice Benz, if I remember right. But just very normal guy.
You got some money, get a nice Benz. That's cool.
Yeah, not too flashy, which explains a lot. He's just the blue collar type wide receiver.
That's exactly
him and Andre Johnson hanging out, just putting up 1,000-yard seasons like it's nothing.
There you go.
All right. The Minnesota Vikings. So picking 9th, even though they should have picked 7th, they selected defensive tackle Kevin Williams out of Oklahoma State, who is off the board for you. But who did you have the Vikings taking here?
Yeah, I had him going with Robert Mathis, the edge rusher. I think he went 138th overall in this draft, but
5th round pick, yeah.
A 5th round pick, so pretty good career. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler. He was an All-Pro once. He had 123 career sacks. He's a Super Bowl champ, so pretty good, solid career for him. I think Vikings just needed help on the defensive line, whether it was a defensive tackle or edge rusher. Mathis comes in, kind of gives them a guy who can come off the edge, and they just kind of start building that line, and that was the idea there. And I think he's probably the second best pass rusher here in this draft.
Easily.
Yeah, easily. So with Suggs off the board, I think Mathis made a lot of sense.
3 career sacks. So that is very impressive. I don't know where that puts him all time, but it sounds like top 10, top 15. I'll double check after the pod, but he's up there for sure. I went with Kevin Williams. I couldn't pass him up. It just made sense. It's one of those things like, all right, you got it right the first time. Why mess it up if you got it right the first time? And he's still on the board. So just an easy slam dunk pick. It's another one of those things where it's like, you just plug and play. You don't really think about it's not going to get fans excited getting like a run stuffing defensive tackle, but great player. Like you said, 5-time All-Pro, hard to pass that up. All right. 10th overall, the Baltimore Ravens picked Terrell Suggs, edge rusher out of Arizona State. Obviously he's off the board for you. So who did you have the Ravens taking here?
Yeah, I had him still going edge rusher. I think this one's gonna surprise you a little bit. I had him going Umenyiora. He went second round, 56th overall. I think he was a pretty good edge rusher. I know a lot of his success came being next to Michael Strahan, this kind of stuff, but he was a talented guy. He was 2-time Pro Bowler. He was an All-Pro. He has 85 career sacks, maybe a little less because I don't think he played as long. But I do think the talent was there, and I think that was a guy the Ravens could use, right? And that's what they were always missing, like an edge guy. So Terrell Suggs obviously brought that, but I think with both him and Mathis off the board, I would go with Umenyiora.
He's a perfect fit. Perfect fit. I mean, he feels like a Raven, if that makes sense. Again, that same like lunch pail, blue collar, whatever you want to call it, mentality. But he was really good on those Super Bowl teams, or that Super Bowl team that won, and a huge part of that defensive line. I did not have him. I went with Robert Mathis because he's still on the board for me. Sorry, I'm not Robert Mathis. I went with Lance Briggs. I'm looking at the wrong
Lance Briggs. Okay.
Lance Briggs. So my thought was you have Ray Lewis in the middle. Let's add Lance Briggs on the weak side. So very similar to how things worked out in Chicago with him and Brian Urlacher. He's one of the best linebackers of this generation, and I think he's kind of underlooked because of the fact that he played next to Urlacher. So the same thing's going to happen to him when he goes and plays in Baltimore, where he's playing next to Ray Lewis. But just an incredible player. I think those Bears teams, that the defensive versatility of him and Urlacher allowed them to be this completely dominant unit. Like if you think about that team, you're thinking about him, Peanut Tillman, Urlacher, maybe Mike Brown at safety. You're not really thinking about the defensive line as much. And I think those guys made the defensive line better because I feel like the defensive line was kind of interchangeable with those guys. I couldn't pass them up. And he went to Arizona, so that's my school. Couldn't pass him up.
Come on, bro. You went to Davis, not Arizona.
Well, Davis does not have one proper football team, so you gotta spread the love a little bit.
No, I know. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah,
it's because your brother went there, right, Colin? Your brother went to Arizona.
My brother and my dad, and I was born in Tucson.
Okay, all right, I'll give it to you.
Come on. I have family
ties. Tucson's a hella boring city, by the way. Sorry, sidetracking, but yeah,
I can't.
My sister lived there. My sister lived there for like 3 years. It was bad.
I can't argue. It's beautiful, but it's not the most exciting place.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. 7th overall, the Seattle Seahawks took cornerback Marcus Trufant out of Washington State. Who did you have the Seahawks picking here?
Yeah, I had him going Anquan Bolden here. I think the Seahawks desperately needed wide receivers. I think they're starting like Corinne Robinson and someone else. Like they just didn't have wide receivers. So I think Bolden kind of steps in, becomes the wide receiver one here. Like we said, amazing career. He was the rookie of the year in 2003, offensive rookie of the year. So he had an exceptional career and then over almost 13,800 receiving yards. So yeah, when you can get a receiver like Anquan Bolden and not have to start Corinne Robinson, I think that's what you do.
I think like the 10K mark, both for running back and receivers, like that's like the benchmark for an exceptional career. Like that once you hit that, and then obviously every 1,000 after that is like, okay, you're reaching like another echelon of greatness because of your longevity and all that. Anquan Bolden is off the board for me. I went with Nnamdi Asomugha, who I just could not let him slip out of the top 12, top 15, whatever. The best defensive back in this draft, I think it's fair to say. He didn't have the most interceptions, didn't have the most stats, but it's one of those things where when you watched it, you knew that he was the best player on the field. And he was like a true shutdown corner because nobody threw the ball his way. That's why he didn't have, 50 interceptions or 30 interceptions, whatever, like, some of the other guys in this class. But I couldn't pass him up. Multi-time All-Pro. He didn't have the longest career. I think once he left the Raiders, he started to fall off a bit. Some of it was a scheme fit, but I think he aged pretty quickly. Maybe it was just all those years playing on bad teams in Oakland, but he's one of those guys that's like, he's one of the few bright spots in a very dark era for the team. So did I reach for him a little bit here? What do you think?
Maybe slightly, but I do think he's worthy of a top 16. He should be in the top 16.
Is he the best defensive back in this draft?
Maybe. It's close. It's close between him and another guy. We'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
We'll get there. I think you're blinded by stats. I think you're a numbers guy.
No, I'm not blinded by stats. I like Nnamdi in Oakland, and fun fact actually, Holly, he used to work out at the gym I used to go to. In this era, like my dad used to go there, and he was like, "Oh, I saw Nnamdi Asomugha working out at the Bay Club today." I was like, "What?" I was like, "That's cool, I guess." So he used to come out to Fremont and work out. So people have seen him at the gym there. And then
nice guy.
I liked him. I liked him. Yeah, very nice guy. Very nice guy. I think he was good in Oakland. I think when he went to the Eagles, that kind of messed him up because he was asked to do more zone coverage, and he wasn't great in zone coverage, and that kind of didn't work out for him. So, and he was also older, right? So who can fault him? But I think shorter prime. I think there's a guy he's right there with them. I think Asante Samuel will get to him, but I think he's right there with Nnamdi. I think they're neck and neck.
I think it's just it's hard to compare those two because cornerback is obviously like it's dependent on some of the other factors around him, and if you're already playing on a great defense, you're gonna put up better numbers versus Nnamdi, where again he would just shut down half of the field. You just erase your number one wide receiver. It's like we had Revis Island, we also had Nnamdi Island back in the day. But anyway, I probably spoil some of the future picks. But 12th, the St. Louis Rams selected defensive tackle Jimmy Kennedy. So he's another guy. A lot of defensive tackles in this class that were just like they were just complete busts. I don't know why. Seems to be a trend. Who did you have the Rams selecting here?
Yeah, I had him going Jason Witten, who went 69th overall here. I thought, look at this Rams offense. They have Marshall Faulk, they have Torrey Holt, but you could not name who their tight end was and give him a future Hall of Famer like Jason Witten. I think he's a Hall of Fame finalist. Give him that guy, right? 11-time Pro Bowl, 2-time All Pro, 13,000 career receiving yards, like one of the greatest tight ends to do it for a long time, and right there, right behind Antonio Gates. I think put that guy on the Rams offense, and maybe they actually win one of those Super Bowls. Maybe they win another Super Bowl, right, for the Rams. So I think that would be a great fit for them.
Yeah, he was actually he had the most Pro Bowls in this draft class, which I was not terribly surprised because he just was so consistent for so long, played forever on Dallas. Then he had that 1 year with the Raiders, which we don't have to talk about. It's like I think
I didn't even remember he was a Raider.
Yeah, because he retired then unretired, and he came back.
God,
Remember,
God.
he was in the booth. He did Monday Night Football.
Oh
And he
yeah,
was
yeah,
awful.
yeah. Now I remember that year. Yeah.
He's a terrible commentator, but an incredible tight end. This is a strong tight end class. I mean, if you include Antonio Gates, who obviously went undrafted, but you got Witten, Dallas Clark, and Antonio Gates. So three of the premier tight ends from this era went in the same class. So speaking of the guy that you were just hinting at in the previous segment, I went with Asante Samuel, who went out of UCF. He was 120th overall. Just again, the ball hawk, a playmaking ability. He's most famous for dropping like a semi-easy interception. If you go back and look at it, it wasn't that easy of a pick that he dropped in the Giants game. It was, on the sideline. He had to jump up for it, his hands. Anyway, one of the premier ball hawks of this era, and just a guy that it was. I wanted to go Jason Witten, but I was like, all right, if you want to make an impact defensively, which I think is what they were trying to do with this Jimmy Kennedy pick that didn't work out, you might as well go with a very talented cornerback who for some reason has beef with Deion Sanders. I don't know if you've seen that recently.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, is he now famous for beefing with Deion Sanders and trying to say he's better than Deion? But Asante Samuels, you're not even on the Hall of Fame ballot, bro. Like, who are you beefing with?
Maybe eventually he's another guy that went to the
Eventually,
Eagles, and he went to the Eagles and did not have a great second part of his career, but he was okay there, still putting up interception numbers.
And
but
can you believe it? His son is in the NFL now. It's crazy.
But he's not signed right now. I
He's
don't
not
know.
signed. Yeah, he has like a serious neck issue.
Oh, yeah. Everyone
That's
kept
why he's
talking about him
unsigned.
this offseason. Like, why isn't he
Yeah.
in the league? Uh, I guess it's more
I think he'll get
serious.
signed next year again. Yeah, but his neck issue is pretty serious.
He'll be back. All right. 13th overall, the New England Patriots selected defensive tackle Ty Warren out of Texas A&M. I actually remember him. He was decent. He had a solid career. Who did you have the Patriots picking here?
Yeah, I had him going running back Larry Johnson. Who's there? I think the running back at this time was Kevin Falk, so not a great running back. Imagine putting Larry Johnson. I know shorter prime, but in his prime, easily one of the best, right? Like 2-time All Pro. He has 1,700 plus yard seasons.
He is crazy, by the way. I
He
don't know
was
if you,
crazy.
how much.
He was
Not
crazy
crazy good, just insane.
Insane too. Okay, I don't know about that.
Crazy.
That's probably why he's out of the league after a while. So I imagine, right? Too many hits.
Yes. A lot of domestic abuse or domestic
That's
violence.
right. That's what happened. Yes, that's right. Yeah, he was. Yes,
Random
he was
acts
crazy.
of violence and aggression against women. But so I know I don't know if you still had more to say about his accolades.
No,
but
that was it.
continue.
That was it. I was like, he had a short prime, but explains why he was out of the league given the rest of this history. Now I'm remembering he had domestic violence issues, and that kind of forced him out.
He was accusing, I think it was Obama, of being a Satanist. I had a little spat with him on Twitter at some point. He actually responded to me. This was a while back. He said some crazy shit. He said, I called him out on it. He said something back. And then I was like, well, you're a domestic abuser. So I'm not taking your opinion too seriously. Yeah, I mean, he was really good. There was a time I was wondering, I was like, okay, this guy, he had like a 3-year prime where he was like the best running back in the league. and it was basically he took over for Priest Holmes. It was just crazy that the Chiefs at one point had him and Priest Holmes on their roster at the same time, but they didn't have a quarterback, so it didn't matter. But he beefed with, I'm forgetting the name of the coach of the Chiefs. I think it was Dick Vermeil. At the time, was it Dick Vermeil?
Yeah, I think you're right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, must be
And
him.
so it was just like an attitude thing, and he just always had problems. So I wonder, is this like an Aaron Hernandez situation in on the Patriots? Like, are they able to straighten him out? What do you think? Is that what you're betting on?
That's what I'm betting on. Yeah, yeah. And is Aaron Hernandez on this team at the same time? Maybe they.
No, no, no. This is Aaron
Okay.
Hernandez is later. I'm just wondering, like,
Aaron Hernandez is
similar
later. Yeah. Okay.
situation where a guy
Yeah,
just
I
has
think so.
mental
Like
issues. So
Belichick, Brady, they kind of maybe keep him in line a little bit. That's what I'm thinking.
that's the
But who
hope, right?
knows? Yeah.
So I went with them picking Jason Witten. He would have been like Gronk before Gronk. It would have been, you know.
But then they never go with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk. They're two
So there
tight
you go.
ends.
Maybe it's better long term. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Aaron Hernandez documentary, but a lot of the issues that he had was the fact that he got drafted, you know, an hour's drive away from where he grew up. So maybe he ends up on another team. They probably still take Gronk and they do that double tight end thing that they did for a long time. Just again, everything you said about Jason Witten, 15-year career, I think 9 Pro Bowls, bunch of All Pros, he slam dunk Hall of Famer. You just put him in New England, and he's doing even better because he's playing with greatest quarterback of all time. He's probably got a couple rings to add to his resume instead of just some individual stats, but could not let him drop any further than that. All right, we're getting towards the end here. The Chicago Bears, they drafted Michael Haynes, defensive end out of Penn State, another defensive tackle or defensive lineman that just didn't do all that great. I don't know what's going on in this top 15 here. Maybe just they shouldn't have picked any defensive lineman. Or they just picked the wrong ones, we should say. So who did you have the Bears picking here?
Yeah, I couldn't let Nnamdi Asomugha slide too much further down here. So I had him going Nnamdi Asomugha, right? Like you said, one of the best shutdown corners in his prime. And there's a world where they end up still drafting Charles Tillman here, and then
And he was a second round pick, so
yeah, there's a world where they go with both. Maybe I don't know, but could you imagine that combination? Nnamdi Asomugha on one side and Charles Tillman on the other, right? The guy's like one guy's a turnover machine, one guy's a shutdown corner. So I think he's definitely deserving of the top 16 here, and like you said, probably the best cornerback in this draft.
definitely the best cornerback in this draft. But there are contenders, like you said, Charles Tillman,
I can't say definitely, but
Okay,
I'll give him that he's probably the top one. Probably. You can make a case for Asante.
I
You
am very
took both those
biased.
guys earlier than I would have.
I'm very biased. I will completely
I
admit
know you are.
I'm shameless about it. I just wanted to give him some love because he deserved it. Chicago Bears, I went with Robert Mathis. This is where I had him. I jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but 123 sacks, all the stuff that you talked about, Super Bowl, All Pro, Pro Bowl, all that stuff. He's kind of like the forgotten pass rusher on this team because of Dwight Freeney on the other side. But there was a time where they had both of these guys, and it was just an incredible pass rush duo. Undersized, went to a small school, Alabama A&M. That's probably why he went in the 5th round, but just a undeniable talent. And again, not as long of a prime or as long of a career as some of the other pass rushers in this era, but 123 sacks is bonkers, especially for a guy that went in the 5th round. So again, kind of an overlooked dude that ended up being one of the best players of this era. All right, we're getting to the end here. 15th overall, the Philadelphia Eagles. Jesus Christ. Jerome McDougal, defensive end out of Miami.
I don't know why. I actually remember this name for some reason. I thought everyone loved him when he was coming out.
Me too. I remember the name, but obviously he didn't do much. This is, I think, the 5th or 6th defensive end or defensive
Sixth,
lineman
yeah.
in this top 15, top 16 that did not pan out. Who did you have the Eagles picking here?
Yeah, I had him going Lance Briggs because it looked like he would be an immediate starter here for the Eagles, who didn't have much at the linebacking core. So he was great for the Bears. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler, even had 1-time All Pro. I know some people are like, oh, maybe his stats came from playing next to Brian Urlacher, but I think he was a beast in his own right. So I think he has over 1,000 career tackles. So that's something not to take lightly. And that's what playing with Brian Urlacher. Imagine if he's just kind of free roaming on his own. Maybe he has even more than that.
I mean, he would have played with, I think Jeremiah Trotter was the middle linebacker. I don't know. That name is very, sticks in my mind.
I don't think Trotter was there just yet. I think he came later.
Okay. But it would have been like him and Brian Dawkins. So it would have been a pretty, sweet
Brian Dawkins, yeah.
duo there in Philly. We were just talking about how crazy he was, but I went with Larry Johnson, uh, running back out of Penn State. He actually grew up or was born and raised in
Oh,
the Penn State
Trotter
area.
was there, but he
Yeah.
went. He left the no, but he left. He left in
Oh,
'01 when
okay.
he was on the Redskins. But then he came back again, and then he left again, and then he came back again. He has a weird history with the Eagles. Okay.
You just couldn't resist the city of
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
he came
Um,
back in '04.
all right. So I went with Larry Johnson. The hope is instead of beefing with Dick Vermeil, he gets off on the right foot with Andy Reid. He pairs really nicely with Brian Westbrook, who was this incredible weapon of a running back, but not like your traditional, give him 20, 30 carries a game type guy. So you put him on this offense, and all of a sudden it's him, T.O., Brian Westbrook, Freddie Mitchell, and Donovan McNabb, obviously. And you're like, okay, they were already like a Super Bowl contender every year with that team. Then you add an all-pro like workhorse type running back, and maybe you're cooking, and maybe he doesn't have some of the same problems that he did in Kansas City, but a lot of issues, but couldn't pass up the talent.
I highly doubt that, given the issues T.O. had in Philadelphia.
This is true. I also considered Willis McGahee. I think he had the better
Mm,
career because he
yes,
was
he
the
did.
leading rusher, but I think like top end prime
Larry Johnson for
Larry
sure.
Johnson.
Yeah,
He
yeah, for
was
sure.
MVP candidate type guy in just a bonkers couple seasons in
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City. All right, the
Agreed.
last pick here of the top 16, the Pittsburgh Steelers took probably the best player in this draft, safety Troy Polamalu out of USC. So who did you have the Steelers picking here?
Yeah, I had them taking Asante Samuel here. Okay, can't get Troy Polamalu. Let's just take the best available kind of defensive back here, I think, which is Asante Samuels. Like we talked about, he was pretty good. He had a four-time Pro Bowl career, 2 times All Pro, 51 career interceptions.
51.
Just
Jesus, that's a lot.
51. I mean, if you look at his career AV versus Nnamdi's, he's slightly higher. He's actually quite a bit higher. He's at 89 versus Nnamdi's 67. But again, that's the Eagles' years that cut off Nnamdi.
It's the Eagles years. It's the not playing on the Patriots years, not playing for Bill
Yes.
Belichick years.
Not playing for Bill. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. Who knows? Nnamdi maybe has all these stats too if he plays for Bill.
I mean, he's not getting those interceptions. I'll tell you that because nobody's testing him the way they did Asante Samuel.
That's true. That is true.
Whatever, he's got the numbers. It's not like I skipped him. I still picked him in my top 15. So I also went with a defensive back. I went with Peanut Tillman. Couldn't let him drop out. There was just, dude, there's so many good players in this draft. It was incredible. I'm like clicking through, filtering by different categories. I'm like, oh man, I
It was
remember him. I
insane.
remember him.
It was
Uh,
insane.
Physical cornerback, playmaker, the trademark peanut punch. Everyone is still doing that, forcing fumbles in the open field like nobody else. He's like, if you look at the all-time forced fumbles, he's up there. I think he's top 5 or top 10, but it's like everyone else in that top 20 even is a defensive lineman or a linebacker. And then you've got this, 190-pound cornerback in there.
Insane.
Just an
Insane.
insane career. Great career with the Bears. Played for the Panthers. Had a good career there as well. I think he's an FBI agent now or something. It's very random. A lot of like weird careers coming out of this. He had Nnamdi Asomugha as an actor now. He's making movies, and you got Charles Tillman, who's
Did Nnamdi go to Cal? Am I
he did
confusing
go
that?
to Cal.
He
So
did. He did go to Cal. So yeah,
that's another bias for me. Just a
yeah,
local
fair enough.
guy.
Local guy.
I root for Cal too. I'm unashamed to root for Cal in Pac-12 or Pac-10. I guess they were Pac-10 back then. Yeah, a lot of Pac-10 talent in this top
Mm-hmm.
16 for us. Got Suggs, Palmer, Polamalu. This was probably the golden era for the Pac-10. You're thinking USC, Reggie Bush, and you got
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all these Heisman winners, Cal, Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch. Anyway, so honorable mentions. It's like that'd probably be another 30 minutes. We're talking about honorable mentions in this
Yeah,
draft, but throw me a few that you were like, I wanted to fit this dude in, but I just couldn't.
yeah. Charles Tillman was the first one on there. Dallas Clark, another one. Willis McGahee.
I want to talk about Dallas Clark for a second. I
Yeah, sure. Go
love
ahead.
this guy because he was. I love receivers and tight ends that don't wear gloves. So for
Yes, he was
me,
no glove. He was a no gloved guy.
but he had the tape. I don't know if the tape
Yes.
actually made a difference, but I remember in high school at this time, people were trying to be cool and they would do the little bit of tape on each knuckle. and that's exactly what Dallas Clark did. I just thought it was cool. I also like, I think we've talked about this before. I like tight ends that wear numbers in the 40s. I feel like, I don't know why. It's just a just a thing for me. So I was actually hoping Tyler Warren, the recent pick of the Colts, would also wear 40, but he's wearing 84. He probably didn't want to wear his
84.
college number.
He
So
didn't want to. Yeah,
I don't
probably.
know if Dallas Clark's number is retired, but
Might be. Maybe.
yeah. And then Willis McGahee, just one of my favorite running backs from this era. When I think of him, I mean, he was good on Buffalo, but I just remember him in Baltimore with the black visor, and he just looked so cool.
That was sick. Yeah, that was
Just
sick when
sick.
you used to do that.
But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Who else you
But
got?
he was also coming off a torn ACL. I think Willis McGahee when he was in this draft.
Dude,
He was supposed to go. He was supposed to be higher, but he was
it was
coming off
in
torn
the,
ACL.
I think, the national championship game with Miami, and his
Mm-hmm.
knee exploded. I remember he
Mm-hmm.
took a hit, and it was one of those where like the bottom of his leg was just flopping around because he got
Mm-hmm.
he got popped in the knee. And I remember the talk all off season was like, oh man, like he would have been a top 15 pick or top 10 pick, whatever it was, if he didn't get hurt. And
Yep.
then he ends
Yeah.
up having
Exactly.
an incredible career. It's very similar to Frank Gore, which was kind of
Exactly. And
weird,
they
right?
both went to. I think they were both back to back in their Miami years, if I'm not mistaken.
Miami, dude. At one point they had Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee,
Running back
and
you at some point.
Frank Gore. Yeah, not anymore,
Yeah.
but for a long
Not
time
anymore.
that was another golden era for that
Yes.
school.
Yes. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I think Terrence Newman and then Lofa Tatupu. That was about it for me.
Yeah,
I mean, there's probably
solid
more.
middle linebacker. There
Solid, but I
is,
was like,
yeah, we'd probably
there's
spend another
tons more.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
I had
Easily.
OC Umenyiora. He was like right there for me. Rasheem Mathis, another
Shane
defensive back.
Mathis.
Terrence
Yes.
Newman, like you said. Dallas Clark, Willis McGahee. Nick Barnett, kind of an underrated linebacker on the Packers
Mm-hmm.
for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. He's
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
leading tacklers. And then just a little shout out to my guy Justin Fargas, running back on the Raiders.
What? Get out of here.
He is
Why is he on the honorable mentions?
because he's the third leading
Fargas.
rusher in this draft class.
Is he really? Well, this draft class didn't have anyone after Willis
I
McGahee and
know.
Larry Johnson.
Yeah. This was a not a good running back class,
Mm-mm.
not a good quarterback class. Because after Palmer, it's just a bunch of
Yeah.
like nothing.
Like Byron Leftwich might be the third best quarterback here.
Byron Leftwich, Rex Grossman. I think Kyle
Yeah.
Bowler was in
That's
this
gross.
class as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, Kyle Bowler was later. Yeah. So gross,
Not a
class.
good.
What
Another
about
Cal guy.
Lance
Kyle
Moore?
Bowler went to
What
Cal.
about Lance Moore as another honorable mention? Lance Moore.
The wide receiver, right?
Yeah,
New
for the
Orleans.
Saints.
Yeah.
Three prime years.
Why not?
3 good prime years. Yeah.
Throw him in there again. This was because I mean, like we were laughing about it earlier this week, but you thought we were doing 0-2, and you're like, oh man, this draft sucks. And for some reason,
0-2 sucks, and you were like, no, because we did say 0-2 initially,
we
and then
did.
I
So
think
it's completely my fault, but I just dived into 0-3 for whatever reason, and I'm glad we did because it's a much better draft class.
it was a
And I
much
was
better
like,
draft class. Yeah.
what is this guy talking about? This is one of the best draft classes of all time. So I think I want to do some research because I'm very curious now of like I'm trying to think of a way to quantify it. Maybe it's like all pros or Pro Bowls. Maybe all pros is probably the better
All
one. Like,
pros, yeah. Or
but
you
like
go with like their weighted AV, approximate value.
maybe, but I'm just like, which draft class of the past? Because I mean, once you get into like the 80s, the 70s, it's like 15 rounds. It's just like a free for all. And there was at one point, I think it was like in the 50s, I was reading about this. A team actually drafted a player that died. Maybe this was in the 40s. He died in World
Yeah.
War II. And they drafted him. They didn't know he died. So just a very different era. But I'm wondering, in the past 30 years, we'll say back to like 1990, like which draft class had the most Pro Bowlers or the most first team All Pros?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this might be up there, but again, this just super deep draft, a lot of honorable mentions, and I think probably for we're the same age, so I think this draft, especially like this era, is when I like probably really started to pay attention to football. I think we were both like sophomores
In
in
high
high
school.
school. You start to pay attention a little more and you start to actually follow the draft. It's like the internet is really starting to pick up as a
Yeah,
resource
yeah.
for.
It was easy. It was easier to follow the draft now because you got the internet. You can start reading about these guys.
I want to say I started playing fantasy in 02, or '01, something like that. So this was also the era where we started
And then we
getting into
started,
fantasy.
remember, and then we started that fantasy football league, I think in 03 or 04.
There you go. So we have a
Yeah.
special attachment to this era of
Especially
football.
Andre Johnson. That was like my guy every year until he retired.
Couldn't go wrong. There you go. All right, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. Thank you guys
All
for
right, man.
listening. Make sure to hit that follow, like, subscribe button wherever you are listening or watching this podcast. Appreciate you guys.